If you remember drifting, falling off Rainbow Road, and getting wiped out by the blue shell right before the finish line, then you grew up playing Mario Kart. But which one? Because there were 10 mainline games released in the series, including the brand new Mario Kart World for the Nintendo Switch 2, and in this video we're going to compare each of them. There's a lot to get through, so let's get straight into it. First up, released in 1992 for the Super Nintendo, we have Super Mario Kart. Now, this game was designed from the ground up for two-player split screen, which meant the developers didn't bother stretching the aspect ratio back down for single player, they just used the second half as a map or a rear view mirror. And it's amazing how many of the series staples are in this first entry. We've got 8 iconic characters, 20 tracks split across 4 circuits, time trials, battle mode, and all the core items. You can drift, you can boost at the start, and even throw items behind you. Now, coming off modern Mario Kart games, the tracks do feel a bit basic. We've got flat item boxes, flat barriers, flat water, but the designers did a good job of making them seem different with their strong use of color and theme. But despite that, you can take a kid who's only ever played Mario Kart 8, show him this game, and they'll pick it up immediately. And I guess that's a testament to the quality of this original release. They really did get it right the first time around, and then just kept refining and expanding ever since. And speaking of which, released in 1996 for the Nintendo 64, we have Mario Kart 64. And this is where the series really kicked into high gear. It's Mario Kart in 3D! Okay, the characters and karts are still in 2D, but the tracks, man, the tracks! I know that these blocky tracks aren't really a big deal these days, but you've got to remember we were coming off these flat things. Finally, the item boxes are in 3D too, although they kind of look like diamonds in this one. But they do now have some basic voiceover tracks. Plus, this was also the first entry to introduce basic stats for each kart and driver. But the biggest addition was the 4-party split screen, which is what made Mario Kart synonymous with birthday parties and sleepovers. And this game is pure chaotic fun. It's definitely not as polished and doesn't have as many mechanics as the later entries, but that's kind of part of the charm. But this entry did also have some tracks which would become iconic series staples, like Koopa Troopa's Beach, Toad's Turnpike, where you've got to avoid the world's biggest vehicles. Seriously, look, this bus's wheel is bigger than Bowser. And of course, who can forget the LSD Trip meets TV color card that was Rainbow Road in 3D. Also, it has my personal most hated track, Banksy Boardwalk. So many drops into the abyss. Somebody help, I've got the star, but I'm stuck in the corner. Unfortunately, this version was also notorious for its AI rubber banding mechanics, and the players in last place got the best items way too often. But no one really remembers that these days. What we do remember is the over-the-top chaotic fun, and despite being almost 30 years old, this version still holds up pretty well. You can pick it up and play with 4 friends and have an incredible time, even if you do have to hold the controller sideways. Okay, next up, released in 2001 for the Game Boy Advance, is Mario Kart Super Circuit. And this one was a bit of a hybrid. It utilized many of the original Super Nintendo visuals with more refined modern gameplay mechanics. To be fair, visually it was more than just a straight up Super Nintendo port. The karts and characters had a big upgrade, plus the environments had quite a bit more detail, especially in the background. I mean, it also helps that half the screen wasn't taken up by the map this time. This was, of course, the first portable Mario Kart game, so there was a bit more emphasis on single player, but multiplayer was still a big part of it with the link cable option. In addition to the new tracks, Super Circuit also included the 20 original Super Nintendo tracks as unlockables, meaning that it had a total of 40 tracks, which is really impressive. Now, the kart handling in this one always felt quite side-heavy to me, plus the track design combined with the ruthless AI really did kick your ass, which resulted in a lot of rage quitting in the back of my dad's Volvo as a kid. Now, because it was wedged between the 2 console releases, Super Circuit tends to be forgotten or overlooked, but I think it's an important entry because it proved that Mario Kart could work on handhelds. Moving right along, released in 2003 for the GameCube, we have Mario Kart Double Dash. And you know what, I'll just say it right now, this one is my favorite. And it probably has something to do with playing this one the most growing up. But let's be fair, you also have to respect it for trying something new. You see, Nintendo could have just made a GameCube version of Mario Kart 64 with a couple of new characters and tracks, and everybody would have loved it. But they decided to go a step further and actually try something different. At first, the 2 players per kart feature does seem like a bit of a gimmick, but it did open up a whole new co-op angle. Up until this point, Mario Kart was all about destroying friendships one blue shell at a time, and now you could finally work together. Actually, you know what, this game also brought its fair share of drama. There were so many times you'd have friends bickering, the driver blaming the thrower, or the thrower blaming the driver, and then finally they would always end with, fine, let's swap if you're so good. Double Dash would also introduce a bunch of new characters to create a range of duos to choose from, or you could just pick the most unlikely characters and force them together. This was also the first time you could choose different cards for your character, each with a different stat, which helped bring another dimension to the gameplay. Plus, you also had character-specific items. The cards themselves also felt really nice to control. To me, they were the perfect balance of weight and cornering, and because I am a casual, I actually prefer Double Dash's simplified drifting mechanics. It's like gliding along the smoothest piece of butter. Now, just all of those things alone would have been enough to make a great game, but the developers also went out of their way to give us some of the series' most innovative and beloved tracks, from Baby Park to DK Mountain and of course Mushroom City, as you desperately tried to avoid the Bomb-Ombs and the giant Wigglebus. The game also had a charming art style which placed it squarely into that early 2000s GameCube aesthetic, one which I think holds up much better than many of the series' other entries. But I do also think that Double Dash is a perfect example of a you had to be there type game. Everyone who grew up playing it will swear by it, whilst those who came in later see it as a good Mario Kart game with a weird gimmick tacked on. Alright, moving on, released in 2005 for the Nintendo DS is Mario Kart DS. Now, despite being a handheld game, Mario Kart DS marked a big step forward for the series, being the first game to feature online multiplayer. I mean, yes, half the players would drop out by the time you finished a circuit, but this was a big step forward for the online shy Nintendo of the mid-2000s. There were 12 characters, each with multiple cards, and this game has been praised by the community for having a straightforward yet balanced stat system. There was also a really strong selection of tracks and circuits. Yes, visually they were a step back from Double Dash, but they were much better than the ones on the Nintendo 64. Plus, the game ran smooth and delivered everything you'd expect from a full Mario Kart experience. This was also the first entry to introduce Retro Cups, a feature that became a prominent part of the series going forward. It was great to replay the Super Nintendo and Game Boy tracks in proper 3D, and the developers did a good job of adapting the GameCube tracks to DS. This entry also introduced Mission Mode, which added quite a bit of substance to the single-player experience. Battle Mode also returned, and of course, who can forget the Custom Emblem Maker, which let 13-year-olds channel their full creativity. Mario Kart DS also overhauled the drifting system, letting you chain drift boosts across straight sections using a technique called snaking. Overall, Mario Kart DS has gone down as being a no-nonsense, focused entry in the series, and it remains a favorite for some players due to its balance of accessibility and depth of gameplay. And you could also play on top of a giant DS. Okay, released in 2008 for the Nintendo Wii, we have Mario Kart Wii. And let's be honest, this has always been seen as the one for the casuals. The one for kids and pensioners because it was released on the Wii. And I mean, it didn't exactly help its image by including that big plastic steering wheel in the box. You know, the one you tried with your dad on Christmas Day and then just threw it straight in the drawer. With the Wii Remote Condom, the fishing rod, and Mel B's Fitness First U-Move Motion Nunchuck. But underneath all that, it was actually one of the most feature-packed and ambitious Mario Kart games ever made. It introduced bikes for the first time, along with tricks, 12-player races, and a massive character roster that included Mii support. And most importantly, it introduced the GOAT himself, Funky Kong. Fellas, this guy slaps your girl's ass at a bar. What do you do? Also, a special shout out to Baby Luigi on the Akira bike. This one had some strong tracks, but there was definitely an emphasis on the more wide open jumping areas for the new tricks feature. The retro circuits are back, which means the first SNES stage now looks better than ever. Something else carried over from the DS was of course the online mode. And back in the day, this was one of the biggest online games on the Wii, and more importantly, one of the few that actually worked. There was no voice chat, no lobbies, it was pure chaos. You picked your character and raced against a bunch of cursed looking Miis. That being said, the driving controls were noticeably looser than on the DS or GameCube versions, and the item balancing could also be a bit frustrating. Visually, it still looks fine, but honestly, I think Double Dash has aged a little better with its cleaner, more stylized GameCube aesthetics. But none of that mattered because Mario Kart Wii sold 37 million copies, and I'm pretty sure if I was 5 years younger, I'd be here telling you that this was the best Mario Kart game ever made. It definitely seems to be for a lot of people of a certain age. Alright, next up, released in 2011 for the 3DS, we have Mario Kart 7. And despite being a handheld release, it introduced a number of mechanics that would become standard in the series going forward. For example, the new kart customization let players choose a frame, wheel type, and glider, each affecting stats like speed, acceleration, and off-road handling. A few new items were introduced like the Super Leaf, which let you swipe nearby racers with a raccoon tail, but the biggest addition were the gliding and underwater driving, which allowed tracks to be a bit more dynamic and vertical. Now, because this game was released early on in the 3DS lifecycle, the developers would add gimmicks like big floating objects and lens flares to make the 3D effect pop. This is also why Mario Kart 7 was the first game in the series to introduce first-person view mode along with gyro controls. But gimmicks aside, the core driving mechanic was pretty well balanced. The karts felt tighter than they did on the Wii, whilst the new glider mechanic was smooth and fun to play. This game was also regarded as having the best retro core selection up to this point. However, there were some downsides. The online mode was refined and stable for a handheld game, but it only allowed for 8 players. And the single player mode feels quite barren when compared to the DS game. I mean, it didn't even have a versus mode. Still, Mario Kart 7 will always be remembered for laying the groundwork for the next game. And so, released in 2014 for the Wii U, we have Mario Kart 8. This one kept the gliding, the underwater sections, and the kart customization, but took things up a level with full HD graphics. This game also introduced anti-gravity racing, which let you drive along walls, ceilings, and twisted tracks in a way that completely changed how courses were designed. This was also the first Mario Kart of the modern era in terms of support, which meant that Nintendo extended its life cycle with a steady rollout of DLC, including crossover content like Zelda, F-Zero, and Animal Crossing, but it wasn't perfect. Battle mode, for example, was widely criticized for reusing standard racetracks instead of proper new arenas. Now, despite those drawbacks, Mario Kart 8 was a good game. Unfortunately, nobody bought the system it was on, which meant that it only sold a meager 8.5 million copies. That's less than half of what Mario Kart 7 sold. So naturally, Nintendo decided to re-release it for the Switch. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe included all the previous DLC up to that point, a better battle mode with dedicated arenas, plus a few new characters. It also introduced smart steering to help younger players stay on the road. Wait, so that's why I haven't fallen off Rainbow Road once? Damn, I thought I was getting better. Over time, Deluxe grew into a massive game. It received continued support in the years after the second launch through the Booster Course Pass, adding dozens of tracks from across the series, and because it spanned 2 generations by the time the final DLC wave dropped, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had become a complete juggernaut, and the most feature-rich Mario Kart game to date by far. I mean, look, Mario's got the regular kart, a submarine, a Formula 1 car, a shoe, a vintage Mercedes SL, and of course, who can forget the teddy bear? And finally, we come to the last entry in the series. Released in 2025 for the Switch 2, we have Mario Kart World. This was the first new mainline game in over a decade. So naturally, Nintendo decided to switch up the formula and follow in the footsteps of its pointy-eared cousin. That's right, Mario Kart has gone open world. Ah, shit, it's the cops. No wanted level, that's a shame. Well, at least I can run over this Goomba. Right, so the Shy Guy pulls up, he gets out. Oh, I think I just blew a drug deal. Poor Mario, look, times are so tough, he's got a side hustle as an Uber Eats driver. Now, personally, I like the free roam mode. In addition to letting you drive and swim around these over-the-top, charming, and sometimes even gorgeous environments, you also have little missions, collectibles, and random tasks to keep you coming back for ages. But we all know that most of our time is going to be spent kart racing. So how does it fare in this latest entry? Well, they really went out of their way with the character roster this time. We've got the mole, the fish, the bee, the cow, that penguin that Mario tried to kill back in the day. There's also a big selection of vehicles for all the characters, however the traditional customization option from 7 and 8 are nowhere to be found. But you do get stickers though, that's nice I guess. As for the actual racing structure, this is where things get interesting. Each Grand Prix still has 4 circuits, but only the first one is your traditional 3-lap looped race. The other 3 already start in motion and have you drive from the last track towards the next one, watching the scenery slowly change. And then the final section has you race 1 loop around the track. It's a bold move and easily the biggest shift in how Mario Kart racing flows. Some players love it, others feel like it removes the tension of memorizing corners and mastering the layout. The criticism has been loud enough that I think Nintendo are going to release a Grand Prix Classic mode in a future update. There is also a new Knockout Tour mode where you race across a bunch of interconnected tracks with no break in between. Now in terms of content, all the regular modes are still here. We still have the time trials, the versus mode, and the battle mode. Plus there are now 20 races in both the local and online modes, making for some pretty chaotic start line antics. You still get some wide open sections, but the gliders have now been replaced with little wings that slide out from the karts. The anti-gravity sections have now made way for Tony Hawk style rail grinding. Plus if you time things right, you can ride along walls for short bursts. Understandably, some people have been critical about the changes and whether Mario Kart really needed to go open world, but honestly I'm not sure what else Nintendo could have done. As I mentioned earlier, Mario Kart 8 was around for over a decade and ended up being the most complete content-packed entry ever, so they couldn't just give it a fresh coat of paint in this entry, especially not at the price they're charging. So whilst turning a long-standing franchise open world is kind of a cliche at this point, Mario Kart World feels a lot closer to Breath of the Wild in terms of ambition and quality than Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in terms of the jank. But I think this entry is going to be around at least until the end of the decade, so only time will tell how it will grow and evolve with various different content additions. In the meantime, here is a comparison of some of the tracks between Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and World. Can you see a generational leap? And so there we have it, every mainline Mario Kart game compared, from flat pixels to full-on open world. This is a series that's constantly evolving whilst managing to stay true to its core. It's been around long enough now to span multiple generations, each with their own nostalgic favorite. And the truth is, no matter which version you grew up with, we've all got great memories of playing these games because at its heart, Mario Kart has always delivered some of the best multiplayer fun out there. But that's just my take. Please let me know if you'd like to see me do this series-wide comparison for other Nintendo properties, or maybe non-Nintendo series. In the meantime, leave a comment below with your memories of Mario Kart, which is your favorite version, what's your signature character and main vehicle. As always, thanks for watching. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to my existing patrons. If you've enjoyed this video, then please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.